Hey guys, I'm in the middle of working on my Adeptus Custodes Combat Patrol, and I just wanted to make a video talking about inspiration in unusual places and the concept of your guys. So let's get into it. This isn't going to be a full painting tutorial. I'll link the Artist Opus tutorial that I used for the armor on these guys, but let's just chat about inspiration and unusual places to find it. So I've never been able to pick an existing faction and just paint them up for as long as I have played Warhammer. I've always liked customizing and messing around with stuff. I've only ever painted one existing faction, which was the Marines Malevolent. I did a kill team of them, and that was because I loved this one artist, Shadefish's depiction of them. And also I just love how they suck. Like, I love that the Marines Malevolent canonically are just the worst. They're nominally good guys, but are just terrible, right? So why don't I do this? Why don't I pick like Ultramarines or Black Angels or whatever? Black Angels, Blood Angels. Partly I think it's insecurity, because it's easier for me to compare my paint schemes to existing stuff that's out there, right? So like if I'm doing Space Marines and I do Imperial Fists or Dark Angels or whatever, I'm going to be comparing it to the stuff that is out there, like the GW heavy metal stuff, and coming up short. But I think it's also just fun to like make up stuff, right? Like when I was younger, this was a really big part of miniatures for me, like making up names and stories for my characters. Lately, that isn't so much of a thing for me, just because I'm not really playing Warhammer right now. Since I got back into painting last year, I haven't actually played a game or anything. It's not really something that I'm looking to do right now. I just like painting and modeling. But I also, write fiction of my own, so I'm not doing as much of the fan fiction or like creating the fiction for my armies lately. But I still think the notion of like your guys, capital Y, capital G, is really cool, right? So when I paint stuff up, I usually like to make up my own scheme for my guys. But then there's the question of like, okay, how do you come up with a theme or a color scheme for your guys? So I like to look in kind of strange places for inspiration. So the first minis that I painted last year when I got back into mini painting, I tried to make them look like they were Best Buy employees. They were Leagues of Votan, which were the minis that convinced me to get back into painting, just because I couldn't believe that they had brought back squats. So I tried to make them look like Best Buy employees. They geek squats. I thought that was kind of a funny bit. Earlier this year I did some Beastmen, and instead of just the kind of realistic browns and grays for the fur, I wanted to make them look really garish and chaotic, rather than this kind of muted and grimdark look. So I kind of based their colors on like a 90s slime Nickelodeon type aesthetic. And then a couple of months ago, someone bought me the Adeptus Custodes Combat Patrol off my wish list, and I knew I didn't want to just do a gold color scheme. I wanted to do something different. So I was going through my reference folder that I keep of just compelling images, and I found this image of a McDonald's from the 90s. And just a quick sidebar here, if you're any kind of artist or writer, or you paint models or anything, you should definitely keep some kind of reference system of images and ideas that you might want to revisit later. At the minimum, just make a Pinterest or a folder on your desktop or an album on your phone, and just take a look at it from time to time. Whenever you find something interesting, drop it in there. And it's a really great way to get ideas and to keep interesting things on your radar. So anyway, this McDonald's that I was talking about is commonly referred to as the Fraser-Bain McDonald's, and that's after an aesthetic category on the Consumer Aesthetics Research Institute website, which is this really great resource of all these different advertising and aesthetics in consumer products over the last, 50, 60 years. So basically, Fraser-Bain is kind of a grown-up grunge that we associate with the look of the show Frasier. It's a lot of brass and marble and kind of uneven textures and things like that. So I knew I wanted marble bases, and I experimented with doing the armor like the tiles of the floor, but I just couldn't really get it quite right, so I decided to just go for this old brass kind of look. And then I realized, like, oh, you know who else has a dad who sits in a big gaudy chair all day? So I did some really minor conversions and made some Niles and Fraser heads and tossed those in there too. I'm still working on these guys, but I'm pretty happy with the vibe that they give off. I really like the combination of the brass and the marble, and I hope to finish them pretty soon. So I want to show you guys another example of getting inspiration from an unusual place. This is from my friend Greg. He's an incredibly creative, cool guy who has been painting a bunch of 40k orcs lately. And it started with painting up one orc with the jazz solo cup theme. I think if you grew up in the 90s or maybe 2000s, you probably have seen this cup before. It's a very iconic image. So Greg decided it would be really funny to just paint up an orc with this theme. And then, in his words, the idea of doing it to an entire army over the course of months was so single-mindedly stupid that I thought it would be way funnier. Since then, he's actually written up lore for his orcs, who he calls the Zesty Boys. So they are these planet-wrecking conquerors who believe that the Jazz Cup is a human artifact of power. And then there are the Beach Gits, because Greg saw that the lore said that these Flash Gits, these orc units, like the color yellow, and that other orcs find them obnoxious. So he put them in Hawaiian shirts, and the beach aesthetic kind of spun out from there. And I love these guys, like the little sandals, the shirts, everything. To me, this is like a perfect example of your guys. It's such a distinctive army. I love these pictures where Greg actually took them to the beach and took pictures with them. And it's just, to me, this is like what this is all about, right? It's just doing something that is distinctively yours, putting your mark on it, and just coming up with something that no one else has done before. So really the takeaway of this video is there's no reason to limit yourself to existing kinds of guys, right? I think some armies in Warhammer, and I'm talking mainly about Warhammer, this applies to like any mini painting, right? But Games Workshop stuff is what I know, so that's what I'm talking about. There's no reason to limit yourself to existing factions or sub-factions. And I think some armies make this really obvious, like with Space Marines, right? It's really easy to invent a new Space Marine chapter. There are canonically so many of them. They're models that have typically pretty flat planes, so it's easy to just tweak colors or come up with new iconography. And I think a lot of people do that, and that's maybe one reason why Space Marines are so popular. But I think you can go broader than that. Like, you know, something like Necrons. Necrons are these metallic space Egyptian Terminators, right? And the way that they're commonly depicted in heavy metal is in this metallic, these metallic tones, right? They don't have to be metal though. Like, they could easily look ceramic or even plastic. To go in more of like a fantasy direction, look at something like Age of Sigmar. You know, skeletons, I think it's sort of assumed, oh, you know, we're going to paint skeletons white because bones are white, or, you know, yellowish white. But this is like a fantasy world, right? Like, this is your magical realm. It can be, skeletons can be any color you want. So, you know, you could have red skeletons, like not red skeleton, but red skeletons, like from Castlevania, or gold skeletons. And immediately, just by doing something like that, you're making your factions stand out so much, even if you don't do any conversions or any advanced painting techniques or modeling, you're going to stand out from every other Necron army or every other skeleton army or whatever. And I think it's just worth exploring things like that, right? Like just trying different things. Custodes don't have to be gold. Even in the official materials, there are custodes that are painted in different colors. I decided to go for this kind of antique, worn, brass, bronze kind of look, just because I felt it fit with the bases better, with the overall aesthetic that I was going for better, and as a bonus, it makes my guys look unique. You know, there are probably people who think, oh, all custodes are gold. I've never seen non-gold custodes before. So really, whatever you decide, just, you know, have fun painting your guys, because after all, they are your guys. And if you decide to paint up an army or a mini that is in an existing color scheme that has been developed by someone else, by Heavy Metal or whoever, then that's awesome. And there is also no reason to restrict yourself to that. Don't feel like you have to do those things. And to some people, this is kind of obvious, I think, but I just wanted to put out there that it's really fun to mess around and do things that aren't so obvious. And it really doesn't take much to make a distinctive looking miniature. It doesn't necessarily take really high level painting techniques or painstaking conversions. It can just be a matter of doing something a little bit different, and you'll come up with something that is totally yours and unique. So thanks for watching. Again, I will link in the description, the artist opus video that I used for this color scheme, and hopefully I will be done with these custodes soon once I unpack them. And thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Have fun painting your guys.